Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and I'm bringing you a book review from Series 2000. It is Book 9, Are You Terrified Yet? Wow, this book is amazing. I said a while ago, and a couple of haul videos ago when I picked this up, I don't know if this book is still in my top 10, but when I read it again, I'll let you know. This book still is in my top 10 all-time favorite books. It's an unsung Halloween book. It takes place in October. There's Halloween costumes. I never see people talking about this book being a Halloween book. I totally forgot about it until I reread it. It's fantastic. It's one of the best books rooted in reality in Goosebumps. This is the most likely story that could ever happen in Goosebumps. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. This probably can happen. What happens in this book. So, without giving too much away, because this book is fantastic, I'm not going to try to spoil the whole thing for you, but I'm going to basically give you a rundown on what the story's about without giving too much away. So the story centers around the chronicles of this kid named Craig. He's a new kid at this school that he moved across town to go to. His family changed houses. And at his old school, he was bullied relentlessly. He was called Craig because he was a scaredy cat. He was afraid of like big groundhogs and just little things. And kids picked on him and bullied him relentlessly. And Craig does something very remarkable one day in his new community. He's starting fresh. That's the theme throughout this book, is starting new, shedding old skin and making new skin. That's what this book is about. It's not too late to change your identity. If you don't like your old identity, you can always change it. That's pretty prevalent in this book. But there's one thing he can't get rid of, and that is his overwhelming fear and anxiety of pretty much everything scary. Now, Craig does this big act, and he becomes a hero. And he meets these three kids, Amy, Brad, and Travis, through this. And he earns the respect and trust of Amy, who develops, I think a borderline obsessive crush on him throughout this book. You'll definitely see Amy is something else. But anyway, Craig finds himself getting into these situations where he's rescuing, he rescued a baby in a moving car. He rescued a boy falling from a tree, but he didn't really rescue them. He tried to help, and he unintentionally saved the day while hurting himself at the expense. And he has this funny, witty commentary throughout the book. Like, he's very aware that he's afraid. He's very aware that he's a wimp. He's very aware of all of this negatives about himself. But the people just keep praising him, and no matter if you try to tell the truth or not, especially to Amy, he can never convince her that he's actually a wimp, that he's actually Craig, and he's not the person she thinks he is. But anyway, the two boys, Brad and Travis, grow wise on Craig, and they say, I don't think that you're all that strong. I don't think that you're all this big of a hero. I think that you're this kid named Craig from this old school, because I have friends that go there, and they told me. And you're going to have to convince me that you're really brave. So these kids come up with these really creepy things to try to scare Craig. The first being a jar of spiders, where he has to put his hand in a jar of spiders for 5 minutes. And the payout would be him and Amy would win $30. That scene is absolutely disgusting and scary at the same time. My heart beat. I was legitimately frightened, and I don't say this normally with Goosebumps. I very rarely get legitimately frightened with reading, the chapters as I go along. But that part of the book genuinely frightened me. No lie. I was legitimately scared out of my mind. But that scene happens. He happens to get his hand out, scared out of his mind. He runs home, puts his hand in cold water, and he's loathing what next trial Travis and Brad put on him, because there's money at stake. This is double or nothing. We're gonna try to scare you again. And the next scare kind of involves a prank with a fake eyeball, and that scene is very gross and very creepy, and it almost feels too real. And the panic actually sets in as a reader. I was legit panicked in that scene. Really unnerving stuff, but it was a prank. But anyway, that scene was pretty standout. And the stakes go higher after that scene. They say, okay, we're going to use Travis's dad's funeral parlor to test to see if you're really all that you say that you are. We're going to test your bravery. We're going to test to see if you are in fact not the scaredy cat we think you are. So the first time they go to the funeral home twice. The first time they go, the goal for him is to sneak in through the window and lay in a coffin with a dead body. And while he's in this coffin, this scene is absolutely disgusting, and well, I won't say disgusting, but it's unsettling. There's this thing with scars on its face in the dark. Can't really see it all that well, and it's holding him down. It's holding him down in the coffin, and he's freaking out. He's panicking, but he doesn't like openly say it. And he happens to free himself and touch the face and realizes it's a mask, and he rips off the mask, and it's Travis. And Travis freaks out, like, how'd you know it's me? You know, this can't be true, yada yada. And they're like, okay, you know when stuff is fake, we're gonna have the real deal. We're gonna have you deal with a real cadaver, and we're gonna ultimately test you here. Double or nothing one more time. If you pass this time, we'll drop it and leave you alone. So Craig has to agree to this because Craig doesn't want to be the wimpy kid anymore, and he's already gone this far into the facade of being the hero, the strong guy. He has a moment of vulnerability with Amy on the phone, but Amy being Amy throughout this book, you guys will, if you read this, you'll understand that Amy's a very pushy type of person, always hyping up Craig and getting him in more trouble. She's just there. She's kind of like a catalyst for a lot of almost everything that happens to Craig in this book. But anyway, he has a heart-to-heart with her. Says, "Look, I'm really this person. You know, I'm sorry I lied to you." And Amy just keeps praising him for being open and being concerned about Travis and Brad's money. But yeah, Amy never once wavers from her belief that Craig is this big superhero. But anyway, the final scene happens, and before this final scene happens, Craig earns the trust of Brad, one of the laggies from Travis's crew. He saves Brad from his older brother Grant. Grant's a bully, and he unintentionally again saves the day, hurts himself while doing it, but he stops Grant from hurting Brad, and Brad thinks he's really a hero. He's really brave. And Brad gives him a heads up, calls him on the phone, and says, "Hey, look, we have this, we have this plan. It's going to happen this is what they plan on doing." But it doesn't really go too much into it, and it cuts to the scene where all the kids this time go into the funeral parlor to see this new interaction with a dead body that just came in, fresh dead body, and the new task is to hug the dead body and shake its hand. And it's very descriptive about the blue spots on the hands and the decayingness of the bodies itself. It's very gross, very, very disturbing, but that's what Craig has to do to get these kids to back off once and for all. And while this is all going on, before this actually really gets going, where he has to hug the body, there's this really disturbing and very unsettling scene of undead people in and around the parlor coming out because they've had their peace disturbed by these kids coming in, and it is jarring. It is jarring. All the kids are scrambling to get to the exit point in the window where they climbed in, and Craig gets left behind. Now, ultimately revealed at the end of the book, you find out what happens to Craig. And this is where I'm going to leave it, because if I go into anything else, it will completely spoil whether if there were real monsters or if this was all a big joke or big prank and who was behind it all. I don't want to give anything away, but that's where I'll leave it. So Craig gets left there, and he may or may not have gotten out, and there's something that you will learn, and that's where I'm going to leave it. But anyway, yeah, so that's basically in a nutshell, Are You Terrified Yet? Very good book. So many highlight points in this book. I could really spend all day doing this, talking about individual points in this book that are absolutely fantastic. the characterization of Craig, the relatability to Craig, his awareness to his faults and to his fears, very refreshing to read. The friends are actually very, very well written and entertaining to read. I honestly think that Amy, Travis, and Brad are some of the best written supporting cast characters in the history of Goosebumps. I would put that up there with Eli from Don't Scream. I mean, like Sabrina, Chuck, Steve. List goes on. But yeah, the characters in this book rock. Really good. The premise behind the book is amazing. Trying to scare Craig. That's the theme of this book. That's why it's called Are You Terrified Yet? They're trying to scare him. And even though he really is scared, he never lets his fears out in the open. And they just think that he's impervious to fear. But even at the very end of the book, you realize that he's still afraid of everything. But even more so that I think what makes this book so relatable and so different, and the most realistic thing that can happen, probably ever written in Goosebumps, is that these are all basically most of the book is about pranks and unintentional heroism, unintentional frightening moments, like very, very everyday frightening moments, like simplicity of putting in a scary movie that scares Craig. How relatable is that? The fear of trying to stop a car when you've never driven a car before, or climbing into a tree that you can know that the branches are going to break apart. I mean, those things are everyday things that you can get scared from. Really relatable stuff in this book. Not to mention those scenes dealing with the spider jar, the funeral home scenes, both of them, absolutely terrifying. End of the book. Oh, I don't want to spoil it, like I said, but you'll see what I mean. The last 2 chapters of this book, A+. There's no negatives to this book. I'm not even gonna even question, are there negatives? There's no negatives. This is a perfect book. This really is a perfect Goosebumps book. From a 0 to 5 stars, it's getting a 5 stars. One of the best books I've ever read. Still holds up. You know, this was one of my favorite books as a kid. Still one of my favorite books now. Definitely one of my all-time favorite Series 2000 books. So yeah, Are You Terrified Yet? So what you guys think of Are You Terrified Yet? Did you love it or hate it? Let me know in the comment section. And I have another book after this I'm going to review, so stay tuned and I'll see you next time.